or so. Again, from a listener's perspective, please ask away. Listeners, please ask your questions. We have got one there from Mark, which I think we're going to return to right now, actually, after we've asked some of this. What the challenges at the moment, guys, the biggest challenges that you're seeing right now with your customers? Just give me an idea of what they are. Now, we've not got a lot of time, right? So, you know, please be conscious of that. I want to get to as many questions as possible. What kind of problems are your customers experiencing right now, knowing where we are? I'm trying not to mention the C word, right? And that's COVID, right? I'm trying not to mention it because there's so much going on and so much sort of fallout from that. I think it's time we look forward maybe rather than continue to look back, right? I think we're at a junction point. So what challenges are you seeing right now? And I'll go to Jack first.
Oh, thanks for that. Thanks for that, David. Well, not necessarily mentioning the C word. I think post the C word, it's going to be that return to the office in terms of getting people in on their correct days, where they want to work, planning that office space. Again, if we're thinking about not just IT, there's a lot of teams and departments in that already. That's already HR and facilities, ensuring who's going to be working where and when. That's certainly a challenge at present for that. And then I think as well, probably moving forward off the back of that, and as a result of that, it's going to be having the people maybe full-time working remote, full-time in the office, and hybrid all together, and then actually managing those expectations and how to deliver services to people who are in kind of either multiple locations or kind of different ones as well there. So not necessarily looking back on COVID, but more so what the future is going to look like after that.
And certainly some of that lends itself to what we're discussing now. I think there was a sort of, if you look at a heat map of ESM over the last year, there was a big rush towards the narrative change, and people wanted to know more about it. And at the minute, it's sort of, I think it's sort of just gone away a little bit. Certainly when we've done some research as well, but I'm sure what you just talked about is essentially that, really, in a nutshell. Dennis, what are you seeing with your customers, maybe from a challenge perspective? What are the biggest challenges they're dealing with right now?
Yeah, so building on from Jack and avoiding the C word, it is really adapting to understanding where all of the employees are. Are they home-based? Are they office-based? Providing that kind of asset visibility, understanding where everybody's located, providing the same level of support that you have for your people working in an office as the same level of support you have people working from home. And it's trying to just build a consistent support experience for everybody.
And we'll come on maybe to what that means for staff as well as users. In some cases, that's the same thing. In other organizations, it's a slightly different relationship. Eileen, similar question, challenges. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, so I think the thing that's always in everyone's sights is sustainability and profitability. So that's always there. And prior to the C word, prior to COVID, people had plans in place. They had strategically worked out how they could achieve that goal. Now, what COVID did was put stuff on hold. And what we're seeing now is that now there's a sort of a ramping up where people are saying, right, we had these plans in place. Are they still what we're aiming for? Are they still what we think strategically we should be targeting at? And ESM is definitely a thumbs up there. The other thing which you touched on earlier, David, was customer experience. That was definitely something we were working much more strongly towards prior, sort of late 2020 or early 2020. And now, people had to put stuff on hold while they organized their VPN access for their 1,000 employees and shipped out monitors to people and all of that. And that's incredibly time consuming. Now that they have some of those processes in place, they're now turning their attention to the plans they had already outlined and the things they'd like to achieve. So there's a sort of a regrouping around the plans they've made. First of all, working out, is that what we still intend to do? Is that still where we see an increase in productivity? Is that still where we're going to see some return on our investment and so on? And if that is the case, right, how do we remobilize ourselves and tackle those things?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, thank you for that, guys. We're going to talk maybe about ESM, and depending on how that goes, then maybe that'll feed into other things. So ESM, Enterprise Service Management, Unified Service Management, is certainly an area that we are looking at as an organization, right? So how do we go beyond the service desk into other parts of the organization to encourage them to a community that talks about best practice, end-to-end service, right? So that's something new for us. We've certainly seen that is a next step, if you look at IT service management and support services in an organization. How would you define ESM, unified service management in its simplest form, absolutely simple, not textbook, right? In its simplest form. And again, back to you, Jack.
Oh, thanks for going first on that one again, David.
That's all right.
Really, no, really, in its very, that's all right, no worries. No, really, in its most simplest form, it is how can a customer request something and how is it then delivered? It doesn't matter where or how they're requesting it in the first place, who or how it is therefore then delivered. It's about being able to fulfill that request and demand on the customer's perspective. Then as an organization and the organizational point of view, it's really about having the metrics and the data and the insight to make proactive changes, but also as well to look back at what and how are things are delivered.
Yeah, cool. Dennis, same question, simplest form, what is ESM? How would you define it?
Yeah, so I define ESM as, again, being able to provide a service. Now that could be regardless of what department, what kind of specialist you are, whether you're somebody in HR that's raising a request for something, or you're an employee raising a request to HR. They all need a platform where they can raise the request, manage these requests, and deliver the services that they do on a day-to-day basis. And ESM is something that essentially organizations look for, whether you're in an IT organization, a HR, or a finance department. We're all working to deliver a service.
Thank you, Dennis. Same question, Eileen.
Great, yeah. So I'd agree with both of those. So it is really looking at the optimum way to deliver services that are provided regardless of the business function, whether it be IT or HR. It's looking for the optimum way to do that. And optimum, not just in terms of a fantastic customer experience, but also that the people delivering the service have a sense of, this is a great way to do it. I have the ability to see how well I'm doing so I can improve it, and so on. And obviously, if you're doing that, what you're trying to do is to rely on expenditure you've already made and experience you've already learned. So in the context of SDI, I think what's really important to realize is part of the ESM thing is there's a drive for people to lean on what's already there in ITSM. That is definitely part of the concept of ESM is to take what's already been learned, to take what's already in place and utilize that and spread it across the functions. So most IT departments are very clear about the process for changing a password. And really what you want to do is to say to other parts of the organization, be it payroll or whatever, to say, okay, if someone does ask you for they're doing their self-assessment return and they need a copy of the expenses they've incurred during the year or whatever it is, they would like that. It might be something payroll very occasionally does, but the customer or the employee or the person who's requested the service, they should experience it in the similar way that they experience their dealings with ITSM, which we hope is very favourable, given that all of us are here today. Yes, we would hope that's a very good experience. And what we're trying to do is to say, ITSM have kind of nailed this, so please lean on us, lean on our technologies, lean on our standards, lean on our experience, so that you can make use of that and then spread this fantastic way of delivering services, which aligns itself with saving money and overall, it's really what business is about, and keeping customers happy. So leaning on ITSM is a key part. It is part of the SDI theme around what ESM is.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, all that. No, that's fine. Thank you. That it's been really interesting, actually, as I mentioned. What we've seen over the last year or so. We did a fantastic knowledge management event recently, where we focused specifically on the subject of knowledge management, not in IT. Knowledge. What is it? How does it work? And we had a fantastic group of speakers, right? And one of them, a guy called Bikram Bush from Dell, talked about the move in his business that he's driving from the information worker to the knowledge worker. And if you look at premises like enterprise knowledge management, which is a thing, right? Obviously, we know. If you look at citizen development, if you look at all that wonderful stuff, the change from pre-automated services and organizations moving to knowledge, so creating, contributing, collaborating, and all this fits in with that. Is ESM a wider cultural thing? It's not just a tool, is it, guys? It's not just you get a tool, you put it in place. So how does that work? Eileen, we'll go to you first. How does an organization shift from the old to the new? Bearing in mind that it is in some part exponential, some of those changes, and in another part, it happens now. Literally, it's happened within months, not years and years and years.
So you're absolutely right. It is more than just a tool. It is absolutely more than a tool. So back to what I was saying before around having standards and having governance, having roles and responsibilities around the fact that there is a service being delivered. So it's even right back to having a culture where some business functions recognize that they deliver a service, and therefore a service has a service recipient. And you owe that service recipient a fantastic experience. So it's not okay to sort of, as I'll go back to the payroll example, sort of sit in payroll and see it as a nuisance for an employee to ask for a copy of their annual expenses. This is something that you, by providing something like that to your employees, they are happier employees, the morale is better, they are better workers, your organization will have a lower turnover. All of it has, the obvious benefits, which all of us here on the SDI webinar are, very much we all think the same about this. And back to the knowledge management one, yes, that's also closely aligned. So if we think of what actually is happening outside in the world, certainly in the areas, I do work in IT and a lot of development, that is how tons of stuff gets done. If you go online and you're building a robot, if you go online and you're building automated code to configure servers, it's all done by community. It's done by people online sharing. There's tons of community sites up there where people very happily share the code, share ideas and so on. That is how people work, and that is how knowledge is built. And that is how knowledge should be built within an organization. So what you're saying to organizations is, this is how it happens. This is how people naturally gravitate towards behaving with each other in their real life. Just as they naturally have gravitated towards using Uber and towards using Amazon and so on. So what your organization should do is reflect the way they easily live in their normal lives. And how they easily live in their normal lives is happily sharing information. So that the organization can capitalize on that, they would provide a tool that enables people to do it. That tool will then helps to embed the culture. But what the tool needs to be able to do, which is what I was showing you earlier, is to then take the correspondence and the communication that's happening amongst the community members and extract from that, say, more formal knowledge articles, or knowledge articles that can be promoted and made available to newcomers to the organization, people who've joined the organization and so on. Yeah, so and I mean, in terms of how you make that shift, how you move to more of an ESM thing, is one is keeping in your sights what's actually happening outside your immediate organization and learning from that, and the other is deciding, do we adopt only a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach, or, which I would suggest, is actually both. You do need to have buy-in from upper management, but you really need pockets of champions and enthusiasts. And that's in our experience where we have been implementing ESM is usually, we've approached people in HR, or actually in our own organization as people in finance. They were totally up for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've seen a lot about, and we might come on to it. We've got a lot of time left, believe it or not, which is a shame. Citizen development, what that means right now in low code and no code, what that means to organizations, how they're changing, right? So we're gonna keep that question in the back of our heads for both Jack and for Dennis. And I'm gonna ask a question from Mark, which sort of ties into this. Mark asked a little bit earlier. ESM is usually, in his experience, approach from an IT direction from within, or from an ITSM tool and onwards, right? But is it a better path from the enterprise back towards IT? And you mentioned that just now, Elaine. I'm going to open this up to the other guys, right? Have you seen this approach used before, since it may come up with some interesting results? I think it's a fair point. Maybe over to Dennis, right? Thinking what we just talked about, cultural shift, the speed of all this happening, it isn't just the tool. What does that actually mean, that move sort of from the organization into IT, not the other way?
Absolutely. So I think we touched upon it earlier when we were kind of talking about how the IT organization, they use ITIL as a framework to essentially understand how to deliver a service. Now, it coming from the organization into IT, I think in one of my slides, we were talking about how the IT organizations are seen as strategic business partners. The rest of the enterprise and organization, they're looking into IT to understand how they can drive an ESM process. Essentially, how can they take all of the services they offer on a day-to-day, standardize it, and what tools can they use to deliver these services? So as Aline just said, it's going to be, first of all, understanding the services they provide, understanding the culture that's already in place, and then adopting you have to adopt like a change of mindset. You have to change mindset on, okay, how can we improve the process we already have? And the good thing about ITSM is, and I think where ESM comes into play, is that ESM simply takes the framework that the ITSM already has in place, and it extends it across the enterprise throughout different organizations. And then that you need a tool that can support that process and help you deliver services across the organization.
Thank you, Dennis. Over to you, Jack. Same question.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I think the perspective it kind of create or maybe looks to suggest is actually that maybe ESM is done to other teams, done to other departments by IT, or is very IT led in that sense. So actually having that shift from actually the enterprise to the organization, the business is deciding on this, and this is how we can go there together. I think what that does naturally by itself break down is different silos between those different teams, between those different departments that could exist already. But like Eileen was saying, actually you need both the bottom up and as well as the top down for this. And I think that approach of this is the strategy of the business, of course, adds that strategic element to it. This is why we're going here. This is how it will benefit you as a customer, as an end user. But also as well, it will increase the accountability as well. So rather than here is a new solution, it's what we use in IT, you can use this. It's actually a strategic decision by the business where there's also going to be accountability as well. So that's not only kind of accountability initially, but also through a project, through a transformation. There's always going to be a focal point to make those key decisions. Again, if there is kind of differences between expectations between between those different teams, departments using it, there's actually going to be that strategic and accountable perspective for that as well, I think.
Yeah, that's great. We've got a couple of minutes left. We've got a lot of questions. There's some in there about data storage, which references sort of the UK data storage and an international data storage legally within the organisation, how they can do it. Another few things in there as well. We may get to those as I ask the rest of the guys who joined us today. So thank you for the questions so far. And we've got a couple of minutes, guys. Probably just a yes or no, right? If we're looking at ESM as a primary driver for the way that organizations change over the next 2 to 3 years, with the information and engagement you're having with customers out there and their buying preferences around that, where they're going strategically, on a scale of 0, never going to happen, to 10, it's here. Where do you see ESM being between now and maybe 2025? How do you see it developing? Will it be, well, yeah, 2 actually, it's going to be a slow burner, or will it be actually no, it's more like 9? We're going to start with Dennis on this one. Quickly, just really quickly, Dennis. Yeah, what do you think is going to happen?
I'm going to give it a solid 8.5. If I have to pick, I'd say 9. And that's because ESM is already here. Organizations are already adopting it, and I think by 2025, it's going to be the norm. It's going to be what we did 5 years ago, or three years ago rather. Yeah, so that's my take.
Good. Eileen, same question.
Yeah, so it's one of those, one person's 5 is another person's 8, isn't it? It's a very objective thing. Yeah, but no, I would, in my view, it's an 8. And I'll tell you, one of the things is we're already doing it for some clients. Now, I would say that what people need to keep their eye on as well is, budgets are budgets, and they get carved up and taken away from people. So what you want to do is to look at where other efficiencies can be gleaned, such as RPA and so on, and you want to integrate that to your solution, your ESM solution. So you want at the back end of your workflows, you want automation triggered so that you're winning on, when people have projects running, you're winning, or budget set aside, you're winning on more than one lane.
Brilliant, thank you. And Jack, finally.
Yeah, no, I'll go for a 7 on this one. I think that's because some, not only organizations, but actually whole industries, whole verticals, it still doesn't mean too much to them. But others are kind of first and full adopters of it. I think as well, what we need to do, and we touched upon it already, is that mindset shift and that cultural change that everything is a service and everyone is a customer. And for some industries, some businesses, that will take a lot longer or a bit longer than others. Some are there. So yeah, for me, that one would be a 7 for that.
Awesome. Guys, great. We're just on time, which is fantastic. So thank you for joining us. It's been great to chat today, look. Hopefully we get a chance to do it again. So I'm going to switch my my screen off or my video off, and we'll, if you're still around, I'm sure I'm sure you'll be able to listen to the next one. But thank you very much. Right, thanks for your time today. See you soon. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Good. Okay, well, we're gonna move on then. Let's have a little look. Where are we? Let me just select the right one there. Maybe that'll do. Okay, we're gonna go move on, and we've got joining us right now from Alemba, Lawrence Scott McKay, who's Strategic Account Director, and Jim Spate, Head of Global Business Development.